All right. Those are my announcements. What else? Do others have announcements or updates? I'm gonna take that as no. But that's okay because Kelly's here now. Brooklyn's here. So Kelly Forkenbrock and Brooklyn Coburn, they are our featured speakers today from the North Liberty Library in Iowa. They're going to talk to us today about small biz in small libraries, their program, as well as kind of the relationship between the library and an MLIS student. So Brooklyn is currently doing her master's at the University of Iowa. So Kelly and Brooklyn, you have the floor. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us, Megan. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Forkenbrock, Public Services Librarian at North Liberty Library. And in Brooklyn, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Brooklyn. I'm the practicum student at North Liberty Library, and I'm finishing my MLIS at the University of Iowa this May.
All right. So I'm going to share screen. Brooklyn and I are not in the same place right now. So we're going to kind of go back and forth with this slide deck, and I will start this up here in the beginning. All right. So everyone can see our screen, I hope.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Let's go ahead and start. The name of this presentation is Higher Learning. Gotta love that play on words. Working with practicum students. And then Brooklyn, if you want to go through our agenda.
So we're going to start with just some questions, libraries and practicums, and then we're going to go through some practical projects they've done at North Liberty, my experience being a practicum student, and then we're going to start talking about our program, Small Business, Small Libraries, kind of how that program got started, our planning process for that, and then getting your library's practicum program going, if that's something that you're interested in, some best practices for practicum advisors, and then we'll end with the Q&A.
All right, sounds good. So again, here we are. We'll leave our contact information at the end, but we just wanted to make sure you put faces with names. I'll start by summarizing the relationships between libraries and universities, or libraries and colleges, or even libraries and businesses who decide to go into a collaborative workspace together. The practicum relationship truly begins with outreach from the system. In this case, we're talking about the relationship between I think I muted myself by mistake. The relationship between a library and is my audio on? Are people hearing me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure okay, there we go. All right. So in this case, we're going to talk about the relationships between a library and a university. In this case, North Liberty Library and the University of Iowa. These practicum relationships typically begin with outreach from the education system. So in our case, the advisor reaches out to us and has a list of graduate students who are interested in pursuing a practicum with our library. Along with that list of students, the advisor will also give us, some CVs or resumes of each of these students to give us an idea of what they'd like to work on. And from there, you would treat the selection process much like a hiring process. So if you as a librarian are at all involved with the with the interviewing, hiring, and onboarding process for new library staff, the same process, it looks very similar to how you would onboard a practicum student. You would invite them in for an interview. And if you decide to move forward with them, you can then provide a thorough onboarding journey for the practicum student to prepare them for their semester with you. And yes, they will be with you for a full semester. So what you want to do is also make sure that as a library that you can take on that added work, because this is a person that will be with you for at least the next 4 months. Most practicum commitments are roughly 150 hours to 200 hours of work. It really depends on the university's program. The University of Iowa's School of Library Information Sciences, which we call UI-SLIS, they typically request, is it 150 hours or 120, Brooklyn?
120.
120. So they require 120. Of course, if the student would like to work more beyond that, they are welcome to do so if that works out for the library as well. But making sure that they hit those 120 hours will be part of the scheduling balance that you will do over those 4 months. The practicum relationship between public libraries and higher education institutions is of mutual benefit, and that's why it works so well. Libraries have an opportunity to lend their expertise to the next generation of library professionals, while students gain experience in a library setting before striking out after graduation. Besides librarianship, some other popular focuses for practicum work in libraries include law students. Social work students are another great one. In fact, we've had social work students, students from the School of Social Work at the University of Iowa join us as practicum students. Sociology students are also great candidates for practicum students for libraries. Any students practicing or studying the government or civics, those can be excellent choices, especially for public libraries. Of course, English and history students are always great candidates for library practicums. And anyone studying what I call identity studies. So if they are studying women's studies or African American studies or LGBTQIA plus studies, those can also be excellent candidates for library practicums. The North Liberty Library, in particular, has done practicum partnerships for years. Now, most of our key practicum relationships have been with the University of Iowa, but we've also partnered with organizations such as United Action for Youth, which is a youth-based community collaborative that focuses on uplifting the youth. And then also the ARC of Southeast Iowa, where folks who live with disabilities are enter the library system as a page or maybe as a library assistant so that they can work in an environment that is suitable for their needs as well. Some of the practicum projects that North Liberty Library has designed after years of practicum work have always been designed with the student in mind. So when you're thinking about what your practicum project is, it's always best to know, who are you bringing on? You've decided on your practicum student, and now you've looked at what they are interested in. The best barometer to figure out the interests that a practicum student has is typically based on the ALA, American Library Association, core competencies. For example, every practicum student from the University of Iowa has to complete a practicum form. And on this practicum form, they are specifically asked to highlight at least 2 core competencies that they want to focus their practicum work on. So that gives them a great scope on what they want to work on when they start their practicum project. Once we know what their core competency preferences are, we as librarians can work alongside them to match their focus areas with the needs of the library. So that's really what the formula is. We find out, number one, what the practicum student wants to cover according to the core competencies as indicated by the ALA. And then we take a look at what the library currently needs. You find a meld between the two, and your practicum project is born. Here's just a listing of just some of the most recent practicum projects North Liberty Library has worked on with past practicum students. We've developed a disruptive behavior flowchart that is not just for children, they are for every human who enters our library. And we came up with this idea with actually a social work, a student from the School of Social Work who was a practicum student. And we developed this flowchart about 4 years ago, and it is still a part of our policies and procedures today at the library. Embody Embrace was an event that highlighted cultural differences and cultural similarities. One of the events that we did was focused on international cooking. So we had, live cooking events, we had workshops, we had keynote speakers talking about cooking. The second Embody Embrace event was based on hair. So it was talking specifically about African American hair. We had stylists come in and do hair for models. It was just so much fun. We learned the history of Black hair through this project. And again, this was a project that was worked on in tandem and in partnership with a UI SLIS practicum student. One very popular project that we tend to have, especially with practicum students who are interested in circulation, who are interested in material development and collections development, are weeding projects. Now, North Liberty Library is admittedly what you would call a small library. We serve a population of just under 25,000 community members. And we have a small library, but we have a very, very robust collection. In fact, one of the practicum students, we have three practicum students working with our library this semester. Brooklyn is one of them. We have another practicum student who is working through a weeding project in our horror and sci-fi sections. And although he always had an interest in collection development, he had a personal preference. His personal reading preference was sci-fi, westerns, and fantasy. So it just so happened that we needed to do some weeding in those sections. So not only were we able to align this practicum's students' professional preferences for their project, we also were able to align with their personal preferences, therefore making them even more engaged in the project. And now I will pass it on to Brooklyn to talk about the student experience.
Hello. Yeah, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about my experience being a practicum student. This is actually not my first practicum. I had one last semester as well, and it was definitely a very different experience. And I learned a lot from that experience as well, but it wasn't necessarily positive. So I have definitely learned a lot about what it takes to have a good practicum experience and what is needed for successful for both the library and the student. Practicums add a lot of value. I know a lot of my cohort has never actually worked professionally in a library as they are, wrapping up their MLIS, because, part-time jobs in libraries can be kind of hard to come by, especially if you don't have any former experience. So for a lot of students, the practicum is the first time they're gaining any practical experience in a library. So it's incredibly important when they graduate and they go out into the world that they've already practiced applying these concepts. And then in addition, of course, you earn the college credit for the course, but all you do earn is the college credit for that course. So it's really important to stress that practicum students are not volunteers, they're not staff people, they're not to supplement regular staffing or to be, running little errands and doing just general work that needs done. It's really important that they're able to apply concepts that they're learning in library school to the actual practical aspects of what a librarian does beyond what like a page or a library assistant does. It's really important that they're gaining experience from MLIS accredited professionals. So a lot of shadowing is important, and like learning is really important beyond just getting that experience and being able to say that you put in 120 hours at a library. So it's really exciting to do the project. I've had a lot of flexibility from both of my practicums were very open to what I was interested in, and I've always wanted to go into administration, goals to be a library director. So a lot of my program or my practicum projects have centered around programming, administration, um, grant writing, and so what. So at North Liberty, I'm working with Kelly on the program Small Biz and Small Libraries, which is what we're going to talk about next. And in addition, I get to work with the grant committee to write some grants and possibly secure more funding for the library. And that is really good experience that I can put on my resume that I can take with me into the world. So that brings us to Small Business, Small Libraries. This is a really fantastic program. It's a monthly event for business professionals who are seeking to gain valuable insights, enhance their business skills, and network with other entrepreneurs in a supportive and research-rich environment. So it's a workshop style program, but sometimes it also follows the sometimes it follows the framework more of a speaker presenter and people get to learn. But the important thing with this is we want everyone to walk away at the end of the program with an action item, with a step that they can take that night to get closer to achieving their goals with their small business. And then I'm going to pass it back to Kelly.
All right. So yeah, let's talk about small business, small libraries. It's been, hold on. I feel like, okay, my audio's on. I just want to make sure. Okay. It's been wonderful working with Brooklyn on this project. It was actually born very recently, in November of 2024. We had our very first Small Biz and Small Libraries event. And the reason why we came up with Small Biz and Small Libraries is because part of my job as public services librarian is to create more programming focused on attracting business to the library, but more so finding a space where small business owners can gain more information about their business ideals. And it was important. Two things were important with small business, small libraries. Number one, I wanted to make sure that it was open to all people on all spectrums of small business ownership, including ideation for people who haven't sold one item, who haven't sold one service yet, that they're still thinking about what they want their small business journey to look like, to people who have been operating a small business for years or decades. We wanted to create a program that brought that entire spectrum of people together. So that was the first goal with small business, small libraries. The second goal with small business, small libraries was I wanted to make sure that every event created an action item that the audience member could implement as soon as they got home. Not something they could do when they clock into work the next day or on the weekend, something they could implement immediately after leaving the event. And I feel that over the past few months, we've been able to accomplish just that. Here are just a list of some of the topics that we've covered. The first topic that we covered in the November event, this was kind of like our pilot event to see if we would get a good response, was funding. I was in contact with an accountant friend of mine that I'd known for years, and she was telling me about a small business grant opportunity that was happening in our state. And I said, you know what? That's going to be the first topic for small business and small libraries. We call the event Small Biz and Small Libraries, but we always have a subtitle, and the subtitle always begins with all about blank. So the first topic was all about funding, where my accountant friend came in. She talked to an audience of about 7 people. And for a small library, 7 people coming to your event is pretty huge, especially for an inaugural event that we've never done before. And she talked about this grant funding opportunity. We took a break in December, came back in January with all about resources. This is where, again, that relationship with higher education is so vital for libraries. I was able to have a business librarian from the University of Iowa's Tippie School of Business come in and facilitate a session on free or low-cost resources that small business owners could use to make their business better. And it was a bevy of resources. I think she introduced about 24 resources, ranging from marketing tools to financial tools, and just showing folks where they can find these tools online, how they can sign up to use these tools for free. Last month, our February event was all about brand strategy. I met a gentleman who runs a brand strategy marketing firm. I met him at a networking event. And I said, I'd love you to come in and talk about brand strategy. I really enjoyed what he talked about regarding storytelling. So I had him come in and do that one. I think the picture that we just showed was from that very event. Not only did he come in to talk about brand strategy with the attendees, I think there were about 12, but he did audits for each of the 12 attendees. So we had a big projection screen up connected to a computer, and he would bring up their social media page or their website or their Linktree or their LinkedIn page, and did very healthy, positive audits of their pages that represent their businesses. In fact, he enjoyed himself so much, he already signed up to come back this summer to do this event again. Some of the other subjects that we plan to present over the next few months, which Brooklyn was key in helping us work on, include public speaking. Brooklyn did such a great job connecting with with a vice president of our local Toastmasters organization. And that person is now, along with another person, is going to come and talk about public speaking and talking about networking. So all about public speaking and networking. Wellness entrepreneurship is another subject that we'll be presenting on this summer. As you know, wellness entrepreneurship is huge. I myself am a small business owner of a wellness brand, so I understand exactly how huge this field is. The person who's going to be presenting at the wellness for the wellness entrepreneurship, actually, I met at the brand strategy event. So it's really interesting how all of these things come together and we're able to create this programming. And again, none of this, the continuation, Brooklyn wasn't here when we started Small Biz and Small Libraries, but because of the relationship with her as a practicum student, we're able to already get this scheduled out until the fall. So we have Small Biz, Small Libraries events already scheduled out through the fall. And this is why it's so important to make the most of your practicum relationships. There's no way I would have been able to make those connections on my own and facilitate those meetings without the assistance of Brooklyn, lending her expertise and lending her time to work on that. Now I'm going to pass it back to Brooklyn to talk about starting your library's practicum program.
Yes, it's been so much fun working with Kelly to put these programs together. This is the kind of experience that would be really hard to get at my current position as a different library assistant. Getting permission to kind of design programs and partner with community partners is something that you're likely to find at a circulation page position. So it gives me really valuable experience in programming and entrepreneurship into the which on my resume as for jobs in programming and outreach services. So as far as getting started at with I reached out to my practicum advisor, and she connected with other advisors from other schools about how they go about finding placements and then connecting students with the right placement. So one thing that she really stressed is supply and demand. There are some years where there's, say, lots of students in the program who are interested in academic librarianship, and then they struggle to find enough academic library for these students to be placed in. And then there's other years where there's a lot of students interested in librarianship. There's not enough nearby public libraries for them to drive through. So supply and demand does change. So they try not to, promise that they're going to be able to get a student to every placement that is hoping for a student. And there's where a really good library has a really good project that they desperately need a student for. And sometimes there's just not a good fit. So it's definitely, it changes with supply and demand. It's important, to reach out to universities, maybe you could reach out to your alma mater and just say, we have projects that practicum students can do, because so many programs are also distance courses. So if you don't live very close to a library school or to a university or college, that doesn't necessarily mean students are close to you. So it can be really good still to reach out and say, if there are students in my area that are looking for practicums, we are willing to host a student and, find that mutual benefit where we are imparting wisdom for the next generation of librarians, and also getting, much needed assistance with projects that we have that we think would be good experience for them. So there's some requirements for the libraries that host practicum students. At the University of Iowa, the direct supervisor has to be an MLIS graduate. So that's one of the requirements they have for practicum supervisors. They think it helps the student to see their career trajectory better and have a better, shadowing experience doing it that way. There's also, of course, requirements for if you just really want a student to, help out with shelving, don't have the money to hire another shelver, it's going to be unlikely that the university is going to agree with that match, because that's not the kind of experience that they are hoping students to get from this program. And if we are going to earn credits for the program, we need to demonstrate success in working towards those core competencies. So it's very important to work with the academic institution and also with the student directly to ensure that they are staying on target with their goals in order to earn the credit for that course, as well as get experience that they want and have a good experience with it. So you can reach out to schools in your area, reach out to your alma mater if you would be interested in hosting students, and let them know, like, this is the person who would be directly supervising the student and their position and their qualifications, as well as some projects that are at your library that you could potentially use students for. And if you don't live next to a library school, you might be interested in having a social work student, like Kelly said, or an MBA student if you have a large enough library and really want to find out how you can connect with more business associations or put together more programs for business owners. It could be worth it to reach out to a business college. So it's always worth it to reach out there, but of course, with supply and demand, it's not a guarantee that you'll be able to connect with a student every year. Of course, North Liberty and other areas around the University of Iowa have been pretty regularly get practicum students, just from the supply of students being able to accommodate that. So if you don't mind, we can go into our next slide with some advice for practicum supervisors if you do start this program.
All right. So we decided to both provide some advice for practicum supervisors, and I thought it was important for Brooklyn to have advice for practicum supervisors as well from a student's perspective. I myself was a practicum student. I graduated from the University of Iowa SLIS program in 2023. And I had a wonderful practicum experience with Iowa City Poetry's lending library. It was fantastic. So my advice to practicum supervisors is be open to ideas. You may think that you're getting this practicum student, you think, oh, I've got this awesome project that I think they'll be perfect for. But really be open to the ideas that your practicum students have. They may see, you see your library every day. So you know how it is when you see your library every day, you may get blinded to things that you didn't even know you needed until you got them. And that's why having a practicum student is so essential, because they will be able to see needs that your library has that you may be blind to because you're there every day. So be open to the ideas from your practicum students. Also, expect questions. I know we expect questions, especially us hiring librarians. When we hire people, we always say, you're new here, ask all the questions. Expect questions from your practicum students as well. And lastly, always provide reassurance. Your practicum students are new, they're feeling nervous, they may be feeling anxious about being in a library setting, not to mention that they have studies, they have this life as a student that is outside of your library. So they have a lot going on, especially if you're working with a practicum student like me who is a non-traditional. I started my practicum journey in my 40s, and so not only did I have a full-time job, and I was also working, and I also had a family, but I was also doing my practicum work as well. So provide reassurance that your practicum students are doing great work, and if you feel like there are some areas where they need to improve, provide that direction and feedback, as Brooklyn will get into, in a constructive way as well. So we'll move on to Brooklyn's advice.
Yes. So like I said, I did have a practicum before this one that did not go quite as well. There was definitely a gap between expectations on both sides. There was a confusion about what a practicum student really is. And when there is that confusion and expectations get crossed, things can quickly go south. So it's really important that you're regularly making sure that you're aligned with the students' goals for their practicum and that they're staying on track to develop in those core competencies. Also that they're completing the project that they set out to do, and giving them feedback on that will help them to learn, because it is a learning experience in addition to a working experience. My second advice is going to be balance shadowing and working. Like, you might have a good project for your student to do, but kind of pigeonholing them into that one project really limits the amount of experience they could be getting. And if they, have never been to the library before, they really want to leave their practicum with a well-rounded experience. So balancing that shadowing work of, you know, watching other librarians in different departments in your library, just how they do their job and what their job entails. I really liked the training process. Liberty Library, there was a one-on-one with each full-time staff member. So I got to sit down with each staff member and talk about what they do, what they love about their job, what they're working on. And then after all of those one-on-ones, I was able to think about not only what my goals were and what competencies I wanted to develop, but after having met with all of those staff, I knew, who has a project going that I think I would be really interested in, and whose job sounds really interesting to me that I hadn't thought of before, that I want to shadow them more. So that shadowing is also really important in addition to completing a project. And then when it comes to working, it's really important that practicum students are, they're not volunteers, they are more like interns. So sometimes we want to have a well-rounded experience, but they're not meant to supplement regular staffing. So if you're just short on a page or desk staff, and you just someone to come in and cover lunch breaks, that's not going to be really mutually beneficial for the student. They need to gain more experience in those more practical aspects that you would have at a full-time position, more so than just like paging work and shelving work. Although those are fundamentals of librarianship, it is important that the experience goes beyond that. And then my last piece of advice would be trust. Sometimes, it's a new person to your library, you train them, but it's important to remember, like, these are graduate students. They have, even if they haven't necessarily worked in a library, they've been taking these courses. They're very well versed. They do bring a lot of experience into the position. So micromanaging them much isn't really going to give them the experience they need, and it's not going to be mutually beneficial because it will take so much staff time away. And that will really cause a, rift in the practical relationship where they're not really able to learn and you're not really able to work because, you're spending so much time. So just kind of trusting them to, professionals and, show a graduate level of understanding and respect for the work is so important to making them powered going into their roles after graduation. Great.
All right, so I think that wraps us up This is a space for Q&A. If you have questions for myself or Brooklyn or both of us, please feel free to either drop them in the chat or unmute and ask away.
What are some of the upcoming topics that you have planned for your All About Blank series?
Oh, that is a great question. So, next month we will actually have one called All About Tough Conversations. It will feature our HR director here at the City of North Liberty. Her name's Alexis Miller, and she's going to be talking specifically about how to have tough conversations as a small business owner with your partners, with your employees, how to have those tough conversations that sometimes I think we all can benefit from learning about having crucial or tough conversations. But with small business owners, sometimes those conversations can be a little delicate because if you've got one employee and you need to talk to that one employee, you may have some bigger decisions to make that will impact the company as a whole a little bit more soundly than if you were, a company of several dozen people. So that's going to be next month. In April, we are having, I think that's our all about networking and pitching. Let me see here. I'm gonna check out what else we have here. There we go. And I'm gonna look, I have our schedule here. I'm gonna just pull it up real quick. Then we have in May will be all about wellness entrepreneurship. In June, we're going to have another round of the brand strategy with our connection there. And then in July, we'll have all about legal. We're going to have a lawyer who is also a small business owner come and talk about all the legalities of being a small business owner. And then in August, we'll have all about personal wealth, how small business owners can make sure their retirement is funded. Because as a small business owner, you don't have another organization handling your 401k or your retirement fund. That all falls on you. So we'll have some banking professionals talking about personal wealth as a small business owner. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to the continued growth of this project for sure.
Thanks. I was just meeting with my SCORE folks this morning, planning programs. So I'm always up for hearing what are other people doing, especially in
Absolutely.
a small system, small rural area, a little bit different from the big cities.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll drop a link here. I'll stop sharing and then I'll drop a link in the chat of a web page from our library that we update every month with the upcoming small business, small libraries event. So
Cool.
I will drop that. Thanks for asking. Great question.
Yeah.
Brooklyn, I may have missed it, but did you have a background or interest in business before you started this practicum?
Yes, actually, I did my last in just one of the things I've always been really interested in is programming specifically for adults, and kind of targeted user group. Has been really interested in the way that libraries can benefit their city and their communities economically, and the return on investments for libraries has always been really important to me, that we are pushing that message of, libraries are not just, for children, and that libraries are not just books. It's really important to me that everyone feels like the library has something for them. So putting together adult programming is always combining that with wanting to have more to say about the return on investment for libraries and how libraries can serve business. So when I, was talking to Kelly about the projects that she has going on and we were doing our one-on-one, this program really stood out to me and I knew I wanted to help work on this one.
Awesome. Yeah, I know all of us here agree that one of the main things that you need to communicate to people is like how libraries can support business and thriving local economies and really are kind of an integral like spoke in that wheel really of making the community work. So that's awesome.
All right, I see a great question in the chat. How many practicum students do we have at one time? Does it change with the needs? Typically, we never have just one practicum student. Right now, we have 3 this semester, and it does change with the need. And we try to make sure that the 3 practicum students, or if we have multiple practicum students, that they're each serving a different need. For example, Brooklyn is definitely more on the business engagement side, the customer service side. She's been a gem in that business engagement specter, from co-hosting this very event right now to attending several networking events with me, some lunch and learns. That's been fun. Then we have another practicum student who is working specifically with our senior population. So they're working with our adult services librarian on senior events and catering to the to our adult patrons. Our third library student is the gentleman I mentioned previously, who's much more interested in circulation and collection development. So I think that's how, if you want to have multiple practicum students, just make sure they're kind of concentrating on different areas so that there's no overlap.
And I will give one more piece of advice about too that I learned from Jenny, the director at North Liberty, when we were doing our one, and I was talking to her about, the practicum program and what made this practicum so successful for me is that it's really important to make sure that you're not just assigning, if you are in the position, if you are administrator or director, that you're not just dropping practicum students onto your staff and making sure that the person who will be the supervisor for the practicum student has the bandwidth to do so, because it is a load on their plate to be doing the shadowing, be putting together the projects, give regular feedback. It definitely is a lot on the plate of the supervisor. So it is important to think of how much staff time do you have to host these practicum students and to really do the program job.
Yeah, I definitely second what Brooklyn said there, hence the clapping. I think that if you are in the middle, if you know going into this new semester, whether that's a fall semester or a spring semester, if you know you're going to be busy with crazy programming or you're hiring people, that might not be the semester for you to host a practicum student. Just be aware of the ebbs and flows of your library schedule so that you have the bandwidth to take on a practicum student. For example, we love taking on practicum students in the fall and the spring. We typically don't take one on in the summer because in the summer we've got several daily programs. We have a summer lunch and fun program that takes up a lot of our time. We have the summer reading program, which as librarians, that can take up a lot of time. And our library is connected to a rec center. So we we have constant activity 365 days a year, but specifically during the summer, we just wouldn't have the bandwidth for that. And we also find that our hiring, we're currently hiring right now, and that's typically our big hiring turnover time is right before the summer. So we know that taking on a practicum student in the summer would not afford us, as Brooklyn said, the bandwidth to really help that person enhance their goals. And that's really what again, you have to get into the mind frame of the practicum. The practicum student isn't here to help you. You, as the librarian, are here to help the practicum student. And as long as you keep that mind frame, then you will have a successful practicum relationship.
Kelly and Brooklyn, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, Megan. I always enjoy these talks, and I'm glad Brooklyn was able to join in on this again. This actually, this slide deck is a part of her capstone project, so
Very
she
cool.
has been a joy to work with.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Brooklyn, hopefully we'll see you at the next couple of meetings, but congratulations on you're almost there. And Kelly, of course, it's always great to see you.
So
So
much, and thank you for participating in this. Thank you, Kelly, for bringing me to Libraries Build Business. This is a really great community, so I'm happy to be here.
awesome. Thanks, everybody. And yeah, again, thanks again, Kelly and Brooklyn. I'll leave the line open for another minute if anybody wants to chat.